So in exercises number 1 and number 2, the solutions were all integers. This is not always going to be the case because only perfect squares will give you integers as solutions. So therefore, you will need to work with simplifying square roots. So we're going to begin by exploring basic operations of square roots. But before we do that, do you see that subscribe button down at the bottom? Maybe you want to go ahead and press that subscribe button so you could have a subscription for free to all of my future videos. Okay, now that you've done that, you can go ahead and click that thumbs up down there also. Now, we're going to move on to exercise number 3. Exercise number 3 says to simplify the following expressions. The first one has been done for you. So let's take a look at what's being done in the first one. We have part A shows the square root of 20 times the square root of 5. Now, when we multiply the two square roots together, it shows us that we could put the 20 and the 5 under the same square root. So the square root of 20 times the square root of 5 is the same thing as the square root of 20 times 5. So we could multiply square roots. And we know that 20 times 5 is 100, and the square root of 100 is positive or negative 10. So using that information, let's try to do part B, where it says the square root of 8 times the square root of 18. So the first thing we want to do is notice that it's in the same form as part A. So what we could probably do is we could probably multiply 8 times 18 under the same square root. Now after we multiply 8 times 18, you're going to get 144. And we know that the square root of 144 is positive or negative 12. Okay. Now we have 2, the square root of 2, times the square root of 98. So same way, we can multiply the square root of 2 times 98 inside the same square root. Because again, we don't know what the square root of 2 is. It's going to be some irrational number. And the same thing with square root of 98. If you put each of these in your calculator, you're going to get an irrational number that doesn't repeat, and it goes on forever. But if you multiply these two numbers together, we're going to get the square root of 196. So we need to now know what is the square root of 196. So you could go ahead and put that in your calculator. Your calculator is only going to give you the positive answer, but we need to know that there's also a negative answer. So we're going to start off our answer with plus or minus, and you should get 14 in your calculators. Now, you see that these both have a positive and negative solution, but we also want to go back to the original idea that all of these were starting out as irrational numbers. And if you recall way back in the beginning of the year when you talked about rational and irrational numbers with what is sometimes true, what's always true, this is the reason why we said it's sometimes true that an irrational number times an irrational number will be an irrational number. Because this is the case that proves it wrong. We have an irrational number here times an irrational number here, but our answer proved to be rational. So an irrational times an irrational is not always irrational. It could be rational too. That's important to know going forward.